Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is R.S. Raghu and with me is Aditi Lumba, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. India votes in support of granting exemption from sanctions to humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan at the UN Security Council. All cultural events and gatherings during Christmas and New Year celebrations banned in the national capital Delhi in view of rising cases of Omicron. Countries around the world take measures to contain the spread of the Omicron COVID variant. Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla hands over 1 million doses of Made in India vaccines to Myanmar as he begins his 2-day visit to the country. Outgoing Secretary General of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Vladimir Putin, hails India's contributions to the organization. UN Human Rights Office terms the migrant situation at the Poland-Belarus border as appalling. In hockey, at the Asian Champions Trophy tournament in Dhaka, India beat 4-3 Pakistan to win bronze. And in football, Bangladesh lifts the SAF Under-19 Championship trophy, beating India 1-0. As India marches towards administering 150 crore vaccine doses against COVID-19, news about the new corona variant is a cause for concern. In this situation, we appeal to our listeners to get fully vaccinated at the earliest and help others get vaccinated. Please continue to follow these 3 simple steps to stay safe. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. The UN Security Council on Wednesday unanimously adopted a US resolution that facilitates humanitarian aid to Afghanistan. The resolution states that payment of funds, other financial assets or economic resources and the provision of goods and services are permitted. It adds that such an assistance that supports basic human needs in Afghanistan is not a violation of sanctions imposed on entities linked to the Taliban. The international community has struggled over how to avert a humanitarian catastrophe amid economic meltdown in Afghanistan since the Taliban swept back to power in mid-August. United States has already frozen to $9.5 billion in assets belonging to the Afghan Central Bank, and the Afghan economy is in a bad shape. India has voted to support the resolution to grant exemption from sanctions for humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan at the United Nations Security Council. India's permanent representative to the UN, Ambassador T.S. Tirumurti, in his statement said that access to humanitarian assistance should be without hindrance. He also added that the disbursement be non-discriminatory and accessible to all.
The winter is already upon us. It is important that assistance be scaled up urgently and unhindered access be provided to the UN and other agencies. In this context, India has supported the call of the international community that access to humanitarian assistance for Afghanistan should be direct and without any hindrance. Humanitarian assistance should be based on the principles of neutrality, impartiality, and independence. And disbursement of the aid should be non-discriminatory and accessible to all, irrespective of ethnicity, religion, or political belief. We welcome the provision in the resolution which calls for a review of the implementation of the humanitarian carve-out after 1 year. Mr. President, over the last 2 decades, India has contributed significantly to the development of Afghanistan. We have just airlifted 500,000 doses of vaccines and 1.6 metric tons of life-saving medicines. We are also in the process of sending more medicines and food grains. India is ready to deliver urgent humanitarian aid consisting of food grains and medicines to the people of Afghanistan. We remain steadfast in our commitment towards humanitarian assistance to the people of Afghanistan. We call on the international community and countries in the region to come together, rising above partisan interests. As the largest regional development partner of Afghanistan, India is willing to coordinate with other stakeholders to work towards enabling expeditious provision of much needed assistance to the people of Afghanistan.
Meanwhile, Taliban soldiers in Afghanistan disrupted the erecting of a security fence by the Pakistani military along the border between the two countries. Afghan Defense Ministry spokesman Inayatullah Khwar Razmi said Taliban forces stopped the Pakistani military from erecting an illegal border fence along the eastern province of Nangarhar on Sunday. Pakistan has fenced most of the 2,600-kilometer border despite protests from Kabul. The Afghan governments have always contested the British-era boundary demarcation that splits families and tribes on either side.
The Delhi Disaster Management Authority, DDMA, has issued an order banning all cultural events and gatherings for Christmas and New Year celebrations in the national capital in view of rising cases of the new COVID variant Omicron. In its order, DDMA has asked all the district magistrates and deputy commissioners of police to ensure that no cultural events and congregations take place during Christmas and New Year. It has instructed all DMs to take all requisite actions and measures to control the spread of COVID-19 cases, including the Omicron variant. It has also asked the DMs to conduct surveys of the entire area, failing in the jurisdiction and identifying those pockets, colonies and markets which have potential of becoming a super spreader or hotspot of COVID-19 virus and Omicron. DDMA said that all the DMs in coordination with Deputy Commissioners of Police will take concerted action in these areas as per the protocol like test, track and treat, containment measures and enforcement of COVID-appropriate behavior. Meanwhile, India's Health Ministry has said that COVID variant Omicron is 3 times more transmissible than the Delta variant. The centre has advised the states and union territories to activate the war rooms and keep taking proactive action at the district or local level.
And now let's take a look at the coronavirus updates from around the world.
U.S. President Joe Biden said that vaccinated people who get COVID may get ill, but they are protected from severe illness and death. Cautioning Americans of the increasing threat of the spread of the Omicron variant ahead of Christmas, Mr. Biden said that the longer the virus is around, the more likely variants form that may be deadlier than the ones that have come before. In a televised address, Mr. Biden appealed to Americans to get vaccinated at the earliest.
All these people who have not been vaccinated, you have an obligation to yourselves, to your families, and quite frankly, I know I'll get criticized for this, to your country. Get vaccinated now. It's free. It's convenient. I promise you, it saves lives.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met virtually with several foreign ministers and representatives of regional organizations involved in the response to the Omicron variant on Tuesday. To exchange information to better understand the Omicron variant, coordinate a global response, and accelerate efforts to combat COVID-19. In a statement, the U.S. State Department appreciated the scientists from South Africa and Botswana, as well as others who quickly identified the new variant and shared samples and data. It added that transparency is core to the collective global health security. Meanwhile, roughly 98% of the active duty force of the U.S. Army has received the COVID-19 vaccine. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has mandated that all service members receive the life-saving shots. Bangladesh has urged people to celebrate Christmas and the New Year on a limited scale due to the continuing COVID-19 pandemic in the country. The Home Ministry issued a letter asking people to arrange public gatherings for social, cultural and religious purposes on a very limited scale following the health guidelines. The law enforcement agencies had meetings at the district and Upazila levels with the concerned people to ensure that health guidelines are properly followed, with the last week of the year coinciding with Christmas and New Year celebrations. Our Dhaka correspondent reports that Bangladesh has started the COVID-19 booster dose vaccination for the frontline workers on a trial basis from Sunday. Home Minister Zaid Maleki said that elderly people above 60 years of age can get booster vaccine doses by showing the vaccination card. For others, the booster dose campaign will start by the end of this month, said the minister. In Germany, the federal and state leaders on Tuesday agreed to impose contact restrictions starting next week. The restrictions, which will apply to both vaccinated and recovered individuals. The restrictions are aimed to dissuade people from holding and attending large New Year's Eve celebrations amid concerns over the Omicron variant. Elsewhere, Israel has announced its plans to roll out a 4th dose of the coronavirus vaccine to at-risk population in light of the country's first reported death due to the Omicron variant. The 4th dose shall be administered to medical personnel and people above 60 years of age. According to reports, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has urged eligible people to not waste time and get vaccinated. Abhishek Mukhopadhyay for World News, AIR.
Meanwhile, France on Wednesday started vaccinating children from the age of 5 as governments scramble to contain fresh virus surges driven by the Omicron variant. French health workers began administering Pfizer-BioNTech jabs to children aged between 5 and 11 in the government's latest step to combat a fresh wave of cases. Finland also revealed plans to expand its vaccination program to children aged between 5 and 12. A day after announcing bars must close at 9 p.m. on Christmas Eve as part of new restrictions to fight record COVID infection levels.
Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla began his 2-day visit to Myanmar on Wednesday. Mr. Shringla handed over 1 million doses of made-in-India vaccines to the representatives of the Myanmar Red Cross Society to support the people of Myanmar, including those along the Indian-Myanmar border, in the fight against COVID-19. This is the first high-level visit to Myanmar since the military takeover in February.
The visit comes just days after a Myanmar court sentenced the deposed state councillor of Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi, and former President Win Myint to 4 years in jail on charges of inciting violence against the military and breaking the natural disaster laws of the country. India said that it is disturbed at the verdicts. Responding to a query about the proceedings against Aung San Suu Kyi and others, the official spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs, Arindam Bagchi, said that as a neighbouring democracy, India has been consistently supportive of the democratic transition in Myanmar. He said that India believes in upholding the rule of law and the democratic process. Any development that undermines these processes and accentuates differences is a matter of deep concern. The spokesperson expressed sincere hope that efforts would be made by all sides to advance the path of dialogue, keeping in mind the nation's future. The Foreign Secretary's visit will be the first high-level visit since the seizure of power by the Myanmar military on the 1st of February this year. The visit will present an opportunity to discuss humanitarian support to Myanmar, security and India-Myanmar border concerns, and the political situation in Myanmar. Anita Anand for World News, AIR.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned that Russia is prepared to take military steps in response to unfriendly Western actions over the Ukraine conflict. He also called for serious negotiations on Russian security demands during his first call with new German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who in turn calls for de-escalation. The Russian president has for weeks accused the United States and the Washington-led NATO military alliance of stoking tensions near Moscow's borders. But this was his first comment hinting at potential conflict. Putin told Defense Ministry officials on Tuesday that if the West continued its aggressive stance, Russia will take appropriate retaliatory military technical measures. He said that he wanted to underscore that Russia has every right to do so. The United States has been sounding the alarm since mid-November that Moscow could be planning a large-scale attack on its ex-Soviet neighbor Ukraine. US President Joe Biden has also warned Putin of the unprecedented sanctions. Russia denied plotting any invasion and has demanded legal guarantees over its security from the United States and NATO, demanding the alliance stop an eastward expansion.
The UN Human Rights Office, OHCHR, has called upon Belarus and Poland to resolve the migrant and refugee crisis at their mutual border. The UN in a statement on Tuesday described the ongoing situation at the Poland-Belarus border as appalling. The statement comes after a visit by a UN human rights team to Poland from the 29th of November to the 3rd of December. Members were not granted access to the restricted border area, while Belarus denied a request to visit. It also said that the practices and policy choices being made by both Belarus and Poland that violate refugees and migrants' rights, including pushing people up to or across the border. It urged the two countries to address the appalling situation and stand up for migrants' rights. Secretary General of Shanghai Cooperation Organization SCO Vladimir Norov hailed India's contribution in constructive approach in the SCO and praised India's several initiatives as chair of the Council of Heads of Government held last year. Mr. Norov, who is completing his tenure of 3 years as SCO Secretary General this month, said India's membership has enhanced the importance of SCO as an organization. Our Beijing correspondent reports that at his farewell meet, he was all praise for India's leadership, which took the responsibility of hosting the council heads of government in 2020 when COVID-19 pandemic was raging. He added that India has common historical and cultural ties with the SCO region, especially Central Asia. He said India's role is very essential in maintaining peace and stability in the Central Asian region, which translates into a peaceful SCO region. He specially mentioned India's role in countering terrorism in the region, most importantly due to evolving situation in Afghanistan. He said India has made an important contribution in maintaining peace and stability in Afghanistan and in humanitarian support to the war-torn country post-US withdrawal.
Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, has called attention to the condition in Lebanon. UN Chief Antonio Guterres paid tribute to the victims of last year's Beirut port blast. In his remarks to the media during his visit to Lebanon, Mr. Guterres said that the free and the fair elections to be held in the country in 2022 will be an opportunity to make their voices heard.
While here, I visited the Beirut port. My thoughts are with the victims of the devastating blast that took the precious lives of more than 200 people, parents, daughters, sons, friends and colleagues from over a dozen countries. The United Nations mourns with you. 2 children of UN staff members were among the youngest victims. The Lebanese people and the families of all the victims deserve answers and justice that can only be met through impartial, thorough and transparent investigation. I am also gravely concerned about the impact of the economic and financial crisis in the country, causing ever more people to need humanitarian assistance.
Note: the Beirut port explosions killed some 217 people, injured more than 6,000 and displaced around 300,000 families, with losses estimated in the billions of dollars. On Monday, the UN Secretary General discussed the current economic and financial crisis gripping the country and the reforms that are needed to put the country back on track with the Lebanon Prime Minister Najib Mikati.
India has called upon Israel and Palestine to act in accordance with the two-state solution. Speaking at the UN Security Council on Tuesday, India's permanent representative to the UN, Ambassador T.S. Tirumurthy, expressed concern at the recent escalation in violence over the illegal settlements by Israel. Ambassador Tirumurthy referred to the 2334 resolution and called upon parties to reverse the recent harmful trends in the region.
Violent attacks against Palestinian and Israeli civilians have continued during the reporting period. So have the acts of destruction, provocation and incitement. We condemn all such acts. Prospects of possible eviction of the Palestinian families in Sheikh Jarrah remains high. Tension continues to prevail at the holy sites of Jerusalem. Settlement activity has resumed after a brief hiatus. We call upon the parties to immediately make concrete efforts to reverse these negative trends. Unilateral actions that unduly alter the status quo on ground pose serious challenges and undercut the viability of the two-state solution. These must be avoided in the interest of peace and stability. Instead, parties must engage in constructive steps that create conducive conditions for the resumption of peace talks.
This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on our Twitter handle at AIR News Alert.
Welcome back to World News. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a special program on the year that was in Nepal.
Nepal's politics continue to be on roll even during the COVID-19 pandemic, with the year that is about to end seeing a change in the Prime Minister not on account of electoral politics but Supreme Court decisions. The 2021 saga started in December 2020 with President Vidya Devi Bhandari accepting the recommendation of Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli to dissolve the House of Representatives, even though much of its 5-year term remained and Mr. Oli commanded a majority. Mr. Oli sought dissolution to avoid any power sharing with his opponents within his own Nepal Communist Party, but fell afoul of the Supreme Court. The court also annulled the unification of the Nepal Communist Party, leaving factions led by Oli and former Prime Minister Prachand as separate entities. Forced to seek a vote of confidence, Oli lost the battle on the floor of the House, but once again the President accepted his recommendation and in a party political act dissolved the House without a floor test, no matter a challenge by the opposition. The dissolution, coupled with likely postponement in elections due to COVID-19, could have given Oli almost a year more in power, sans parliamentary accountability. However, yet again, the Nepal Supreme Court resurrected the House and ordered the appointment of the leader of the opposition and another former Prime Minister, Sher Bahadur Deuba, of the Nepali Congress as Prime Minister. Mr. Deuba thereafter secured a vote of confidence with support from Prachand, a breakaway faction of Oli's party led by another former Prime Minister, Madhav Kumar Nepal, and members of the Madheshi Party, the Janta Samajwadi Party. He is currently in power and will lead Nepal to his next general elections in 2022. Indeed, his position in his own also divided party has just been strengthened by his being re-elected as its president. 2020 under the Prime Minister Oli has been particularly challenging time for India, with Nepal drawing it into a border dispute by claiming territory in India. China also appeared to be having a free rein in its interference in Nepali politics, with apparent encouragement by Oli and the communists. Structurally, Nepal's opening to the rest of the world, including through the migration of Nepalis overseas in large numbers and the inward remittances, has also opened Nepal in a big way to globalization and influences of the West. These, along with Chinese interest and willingness to meddle, are now part of a new normal in Nepal. The political developments of 2020 had cast a shadow over India-Nepal ties, even though development partnership and economic engagement had proceeded apace, included through the opening of integrated checkposts at Birganj and Biratnagar, laying of an oil pipeline and reopening of the rail link between Jayanagar and Janakpur. Most importantly, work continues at a fast pace on the 900 megawatt Arun 3 hydroelectric project, to which the lower Arun project has now also been added. Moreover, even during the COVID-19 lockdowns, trade flourished along with COVID-19 management partnership through vacancies and life-saving drugs and equipment. Given that India remains key to Nepal's growth and stability, there is every reason for the country leveraging its geography, history, people-to-people and economic linkages with India for its own betterment. Similarly, Nepal is a most significant partner for India, being also one of the most important export destinations for Indian goods and services and the biggest source of investment in Nepal. The open borders and the national treatment accorded to nationals of the other country afford a unique opportunity for improvement in the lives for the people of both countries. As time goes on, India and Nepal need to strengthen the engagement across the board given security interest, trade links, civilizational and people ties, and in today's world, the need for strong collaboration on climate change, especially in the Himalayan region, and on water. The changed political scenario in 2021 portends the possibility of a stronger strengthening of the close relations between India and Nepal, given the traditional links of the Nepali Congress with political leaders in India. Moreover, Mr. Deuba has become Prime Minister for the 5th time and so is personally well versed with the nuances of India-Nepal ties, with significant contributions to the strengthening. Just days back, he was re-elected as the President of the Nepali Congress, and this should strengthen his domestic political standing and help bolster ties with India. Abhishek Mukhopadhyay for World News, All India Radio.
In Jammu and Kashmir, an assistant sub-inspector ASI or police and a civilian were shot dead by terrorists this evening in Bijbehara area of South Kashmir's Anantnag district and Old City area of Srinagar respectively. As per a police spokesman, the ASI was identified as Mohammad Ashraf. He succumbed to his injuries while on way to Srinagar, where he was being shifted for specialized treatment. Meanwhile, in Srinagar, a civilian was shot at from a close range outside his residence in Eidgah area of the Old City. He was immediately shifted to nearby hospital where doctors declared him brought dead. Cases have been registered and search to nab the assailants is on. Defense Research and Development Organization (DRDO) on Wednesday successfully conducted maiden flight test of indigenously developed surface-to-surface missile Pralay from the Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Island off the coast of Odisha. The Defense Ministry said the mission has met all its objectives. The new missile followed the desired quasi-ballistic trajectory and reached the designated target with high degree accuracy, validating the control, guidance and mission algorithms. The missile is powered with a solid propellant rocket, motor and many new technologies. The missile has a range of 150 to 500 kilometers and can be launched from a mobile launcher. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh has congratulated DRDO and associated teams for his maiden development flight trial. He complimented DRDO for the fast-track development and successful launch of modern surface-to-surface missile.
The launch of the James Webb Space Telescope JWST has been postponed to the 25th of December. The JWST is a collaboration between the ESA, NASA and the Canadian Space Agency and will be the replacement for the Hubble Space Telescope. The JWST will look further back in time than any other telescope to 400 million years after the Big Bang. The four key goals of the JWST are to search for light from the first stars and galaxies that formed in the universe after the Big Bang, to study the formation and evolution of galaxies, to understand the formation of stars and planetary systems, and to study planetary systems and the origins of life. Moving on to sports, in Asian Champions Trophy hockey tournament, India won the bronze medal beating Pakistan 4-3 in Dhaka on Wednesday. India won the prestigious tournament in 2016 and were joint winners in 2018. In football, Bangladesh has lifted SAF Under-19 Women's Championship, defeating India by a solitary goal in Dhaka. India has lost 0-1 to table topper Bangladesh earlier in the tournament and finished second in the tournament with 9 points.
And now a report from the business world.
The BSE Sensex climbed 612 points or 1.09% to trade at 56,931. The NSE Nifty also rose 185 points or 1.1% to trade at 16,955. Asian share markets extended gains except China's Shanghai Composite Index, which fell 0.1%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng climbed 0.6% and South Korea's Kospi rose 0.3%. Japan's Nikkei added 0.1% and Singapore's Straits Times both added 0.1%. European markets were also up but trading in a narrow range in intraday trade. Oil prices were steady as fears of tight supply were offset by COVID-19 concerns. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading around $74.10 per barrel. Back home, gold prices rose marginally by 10 rupees at multi-commodity exchange for February contracts. The precious metal was trading at 48,080 rupees per 10 grams in intraday trade. Silver prices also added 220 rupees to 62,025 rupees per kilogram for March contracts when reports last came in. And in the forex market, the rupee appreciated 5 paise against the US dollar in afternoon deals. The domestic unit was trading at 75 rupees and 55 paise against the US currency. Rajesh Lake for World News, All India Radio.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Guardian says UK accused of abandoning world's poor as aid turned into colonial investment. Sputnik News reports Russia, Iran, Turkey oppose illegal seizure of oil revenues belonging to Syria. Financial Times writes US stock exchanges seek new listings as Chinese companies retreat. The Wall Street Journal reports Mars buys Asian warehouse giant LF Logistics for $3.6 billion. Himalayan Times says Everest Summiteers Association asked Minister Ali to address mountaineers' problems.
A quick look at the headlines once again. India votes in support of granting exemption from sanctions to humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan at the UN Security Council. All cultural events and gatherings during Christmas and New Year celebrations banned in the national capital Delhi in view of rising cases of Omicron. Countries around the world take measures to contain the spread of the Omicron COVID variant. Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla hands over 1 million doses of made-in-India vaccines to Myanmar as he begins two-day visit to the country. Outgoing Secretary General of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Vladimir Putin hails India's contributions to the organization. UN Human Rights Office terms the migrant situation at the Poland-Belarus border as appalling. In hockey, at the Asian Champions Trophy tournament in Dhaka, India beat 4-3 Pakistan to win bronze. And in football, Bangladesh lifts the SAF Under-19 Championship trophy, beating India 1-0. India is celebrating the 152nd birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from South Africa.
Vaishnav Jan do tene kahiye jai पीड़ पराई जाने रे पर दुखे उपकार करे तो ये पर दुखे उपकार करे तो ये मन.
And with that we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.
News.